Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
Our next guest is CEO and President of C. Mondavie Family Wine Company, Judd Wallenbrock. I'm not going to say anything else but turn it over to Judd and Ann Dahl.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Don. Welcome, Judd, to the Food and Wine Insider Show. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the phone.
Wonderful. I'm just going to start with, I was reading about your background, and it seems that wine is in your blood, literally, as you've been in the wine business, not only an executive, but an entrepreneur. Could you share a little bit with our listeners about your journey?
Yeah, actually, I'm in my 38th year in the wine industry right now, which makes me a seasoned veteran, I guess. And I've spent pretty much my career was developed around the idea that I wanted to walk a mile in the shoes of everybody that touched wine. So I wanted to be a winemaker. I wanted to be a retailer. I wanted to be a restaurateur. I wanted to be a sales rep and drag a bag to restaurants. I wanted to do everything that I possibly could so that by the time I was in a position to manage wineries, I could speak from a voice of experience rather than sort of a voice of hypothetical. And that's what I did. So I set out with my career to walk a mile in the shoes of everybody that touched wine. And frankly, I was very much influenced by my older brother, who's 12 years older than I am. And when I was 16, he was 28. And I was his co-driver, and we drove up from Southern California and went to Napa Valley in 1974. And that was my first trip to Napa, and basically I got bit by the bug from that point on and never looked back. Oh,
fantastic. I really appreciate hearing that story. You created your own philanthropic label, Humanitas.
Right.
If I said it correctly, I'm not sure I have. Could you please talk about the motivations behind that introduction?
Yeah, so I had been an executive with Robert Mondavie Winery, the other side of the family, and at that point in time, we had about 18 different wineries that were reporting in to me from a marketing standpoint, and I pretty much decided what I wanted to do is I had a philosophy, and that philosophy was that you need to have a very compelling reason to exist as a winery. So, with all these 18 different brands, what's their point of differentiation? What makes them compelling? What makes them sort of resonate with people? And in 2001, actually in 1997, I dreamed up the idea, but in 2001, I decided to kind of put my money where my mouth was and said, look, I'm going to start my own winery. I'm going to do it with no money because I have no money. and I'm going to create a wine brand that is unique and compelling and resonates with people. And I thought that cause marketing was the direction to go with that. It certainly worked for this guy, Paul Newman. And I thought, what the heck's he got that I don't have other than, looks, money, notoriety, all that. And so I started making wine in a shed in my backyard, which we affectionately call the Shed Toe. And I named the winery Humanitas, which is a Latin word that means philanthropy and human nature and kindness. And literally just started selling the wine on the internet and through the phone and to some friends who owned, wine shops and restaurants, and one thing led to another, and it just sort of became this organic growth where I could make my own wines, but I could also be doing something good in the world at the same time, and I'd give back to charities that were primary need. Hunger, housing, and education were sort of the primary areas. And I'd also give back to the neighbors, to the neighborhoods where I sold the wine. So in other words, if I sold in New York, for instance, I would give back to New York charities. If I gave, if I was selling in Colorado, Colorado charities, that kind of thing.
And I think that Humanitas participated in the Souls for Souls program. Can you talk a little bit about how you participated in that program?
Yeah, I have a friend who. Yeah, I have a friend who was very involved with Souls for Souls, and she put together the whole effort here in Napa Valley. So she was the one that was really the catalyst that got all the high schools and schools, middle schools, everything like that, to do the shoe drive. And then we turned the winery, which had moved into an industrial park here in Napa, not a very glamorous place, but lots of room, lots of warehouse space. and it was off season, so all of the picking bins were just sitting there empty. And so we started bringing in all these bags and bags and bags of shoes, and warehousing these shoes until we can get enough to fill up an entire trailer full of shoes. And then we had them track. They took those off. I think there was like 10,000 pairs of shoes that we collected, or maybe even more. Now that I think about it, maybe more like 18,000. And shipped them off to Souls for Souls, which I think is based in Arkansas or something like that. It was a lot of fun. It was a great way to get everybody involved in the community, and at the same time, again, not always do you have to give money. In this particular case, we gave shoes.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great story, and how you really participated in that, and how that sort of fit with your brand. I'm going to ask you one more philanthropic question. I'm just curious to know, what's your next chapter to pay it forward? What are the things that you think about or passionate about in this area that you would like to continue to do?
Well, I'll tell you what, I no longer own Humanitas. My partners that I was involved with two other wineries, Jessup Cellars and Handwritten Wines, they bought me out, and then I have no idea what they're going to be doing with Humanitas. But sort of in a parallel path, I started talking to Peter and Mark Mondavie, and they were looking for a CEO, and so I came on board as the CEO of C. Mondavie and Family, with Charles Krug being the showcase winery that we have here in Napa Valley. And one of the things that we also do, in addition to Charles Krug, we also have a small brand called Purple Heart. And Purple Heart is a brand that we give back to, actually we fund the Purple Heart Foundation, which gives its money to soldiers that have been wounded in action. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I get to, even though I no longer own my own philanthropic winery, I still get to end up doing that, which is a great way to do it. And I also give a lot of my time up now, too. I do a lot of things. I'm on the board of directors of the Arts Council in Napa Valley. I feel like the arts are very, very important for a community. And so still get to do things that are philanthropic, but not necessarily with my own brand anymore.
Right. You were just mentioning a little less than a year ago, you became president and CEO of the fourth generation C. Mondavie Wine Company. It's a great family-owned estate. Can you talk a little bit about the path you're setting for the company?
Yeah, actually, I kind of missed that. I'm sorry, you broke apart a little bit. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the path you're setting for the company, this great sort of fourth generation wine company, and having brought you in.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. For me, it's almost a dream come true. I'll be honest with you. I love working with the Mondavie family, both sides. As I said, I worked for about 9 years with the Robert Mondavie side of the family, and I find that in the world of wine, you're going to work for either what I like to call a soulless corporate entity or a great family, and I choose to work for great families. And when I came to work for this company, I wanted to make sure that they weren't going to sell out. I mean, I hate to say that bluntly, but there are a lot of wineries that have sold to large corporations, and that was not my path. So when I came to work for them, or when I was interviewing with them, the primary thing I wanted to find out was what their intentions were as a company. And they have a family pact not to sell. So it's going to be generational. And that kind of drove what was the next step, which became the vision of the company that I helped formulate, which was, look, we're sitting here. We are truly one of the world's great family-owned wine estates. We're a great estate. And we're in the company of the Rothschilds and the company of the Antinoris and those kinds of families. And that became the driving force for me to come on board, and also that's the driving force behind the company now, is to really stage it so that we can be a multi-generational company that lasts for ever and ever and ever. The Antinori family is a perfect example of that. I think they're on generation 27 right now, and it's actually the CEO is actually a woman who is an Antinori. So if I can be in a position to groom a Mondavie for the future to take over for me, that's ideally what I'd love to do. But the most important thing is to make sure that this winery and this estate and this family continue to run it for generations to come, and that's that's sort of the guiding spirit behind what I'm doing right now.
Well, thanks for sharing that. In your early days, you were mentored by Robert Mondavie when I think it's when you moved to Napa in 1992.
Correct.
Talk about some of the things you learned from him.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mr. Mondavie, Robert Mondavie was, and it's strange, I call him Mr. Mondavie, but there's two Mr. Mondavies because there's Peter Sr. as well. But Robert, I think the thing that I learned from Robert and working for Robert Mondavie, the company, was the spirit of culture. In other words, the wines were great, all of that was sort of the basics. But I think the thing that made them so successful was the culture of the company. And that's when I really made that epiphany, that learning that as a CEO and as the president of a company, your primary job is really to create that culture of success, that culture of how do we make things happen, and positivity. I hate to say it, but that's just kind of that simple. Your job is to create an environment that inspires people to want to work and do the best thing that they possibly can. And that's what I think I learned mostly from Robert Mondavie, and frankly, his sons Tim and Mike, who are just great guys, and they created an environment there where everybody wanted to be the best. And I think that was what I learned the most from Robert Mondavie.
And I think I also read, which I think is a great mantra, is wine is part of the good life. And what does that mean to you when I say that?
Well, he defined that. I mean, that was really the good life. Mr. Mondavie used to say all the time, wine is a part of the good life, and everybody should enjoy the good life, from the pauper to the prince. And then he'd go on and he'd say that, I believe that these wines from California belong at the table with the finest wines in the world. And then he'd go on from there and say, and I think these wines from Napa Valley are perhaps the best in California. And what you never heard Robert Mondavie say is, hi, my name's Robert Mondavie. I make the best wines in the world. He never did that. He was always the ambassador for the industry, for wine in general. And for that, I totally, that was my huge respect for him on that. And then along with his wife, Margaret, they, I think that they tag teamed really beautifully to come back and say, look, wine is a part of the good life. Now let's define what the good life is. And they define the good life very simply as wine, food, and the arts. And that is truly the mantra of Napa Valley. And I would say I would offer up maybe even the wine industry in general. And so everything that we were doing had everything to do to connect wine, food, and these cultural activities, from great chefs to great concerts to everything, and just a lifestyle that embodied, the good life.
Yeah, and I think maybe a couple of generations ago that they were very close with Julia Child. So I mean,
oh, yes.
all sort of worked together.
Yep.
I read about a panel discussion you had with Pat Roney, president, and he's the founding partner of Santa Rosa, California-based Vintage Wine Estates, and Paul Leary, who's president of the Blackbird Vineyards in Napa Valley, on direct-to-consumer sales success. What are some of the key points from that discussion regards the direct-to-consumer, getting wine to the consumer directly versus having someone else talk about your wine in a shop, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, actually, it's great because the Napa Valley Vendors just had it's an annual meeting that we had just 2 days ago, and they had Danny Meyer was out as a guest speaker, and he embodied almost everything that we talk about in the direct-to-consumer side of the world, which is. Obviously the product is got to be great, but the product is only 49% of really what this is all about. 51% of it is the experience. And he used a great analogy of there's a ton of great baseball players out there, right? And you're going to judge them by, their on-base percentage, their batting average, how fast they throw the ball, or how fast they run, et cetera, et cetera. But probably 51% of what makes them a superstar is their bench strength. How are they with the team on the bench? And this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, which is culture. So the buzzword that you'll hear all the time, of course, in the direct-to-consumer side of the world is the experience. And the experience is everything that includes the wine, but it's also everything before people, how you're treated before you even come to the winery, how you hear about us on the internet or through social media, how you're greeted on the telephone, everything even before you even get to the winery, and then how you're treated at the winery, the wines that come out of it, and how you're treated after you leave. Do you get a thank you note? Do you get phone calls later on saying thanks for how can we improve? It's just an entire experience. It's taking it to the next level of excellence. And from our standpoint, I told you that our vision is to be recognized as one of the world's great family-owned wine estates, but our mission to get there is to make raving fans out of everybody that we touch and who touches us. And that's, I think, kind of the mantra of this DTC model is how do you make people raving fans and make people remark about you. And it's more than just the wine. It's the entire experience.
And what would you say is how the consumer for wine has changed over time in terms of both knowledge and taste, and obviously experience?
Yeah.
Experience, as you mentioned.
It's a good question. I remember working for Robert Mondavie, and Michael Mondavie asked me, this was in the era when the Generation X was coming on board, and the question was, how do we talk to Generation X? Now it's how do we talk to the millennials? And my own philosophy is that everybody has the same barrier to wine. It doesn't matter if you're a World War II, generation or a millennial. And that barrier is that wine is really kind of fearful. I think people are afraid of looking stupid, and it doesn't matter if you're 21 or if you're 91. And so I think the communication of wine is the key. It's now you may use different language for these different generations, but ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to make wine very, very accessible, and as opposed to, it's a little bit like me learning new software. It scares the heck out of me, right? And there's so much, and I always feel so stupid. But I think that's where Apple just did a great job. They made it simple, and it made it this great experience for me, as opposed to a technical disaster, which it probably would have been had I done it. But I think that it's really just communication. To the various generations and how you talk to people. People have not really changed, I don't think, that much. I think tastes have changed a little bit. We're definitely into maybe we'll call it a riper style of winemaking, sort of what California gives us. We have so much sun, that's what happens. But all, for the most part, I think that what we've done culturally in the United States is we've actually started to become a wine consuming culture, which 30 years ago that was unheard of. I use the example all the time of a businessman in Keokuk, Iowa. Well, 30 years ago, you would never go to a restaurant and see a man, in particular, eating or drinking a glass of wine at lunch, and now you see it all the time, and it's not just on the coast; it's everywhere across the country. So culturally, it's okay to drink wine now. So we've done a great job that way.
I think that's so important, because I think there was a time where you almost needed to be some kind of expert to sort of drink wine, and I think your point about accessibility is really critical. And what would you say to people in terms of how to just enjoy it?
Right. Yeah. I think the most important thing you can do, and this is something I learned as a retailer when I first got in the business. The gentleman that sort of was my mentor is a guy named John Vincente, and he owned a place called the Red Carpet in Glendale, California. And one of the things that he taught me was never, when somebody comes in and is looking for wine, never tell them, I got just the wine for you. His words of wisdom were, listen to what they have to say. And this to me is the exact same thing today. Always listen to what the consumer is saying. Don't try to tell them what you want to tell them. I remember this very distinctly. This elderly woman had come in, and she said, well, my doctor told me I should drink wine, which I loved right there. Yeah. And this is probably 1981. And I said, excellent. She goes, I'm having a dinner party, and I want and I want to have a nice dry white wine to go with my chicken that I'm preparing for my friends. And I said, excellent, that sounds great. What have you had before that you liked? And what she told me was that she liked this Beringer Chenin Blanc. Now, if you remember this, I don't think they make it anymore, but if you remember this, back in 1981, they made a Chenin Blanc that was about a 2.0 residual sugar. Right? So here we've got this woman who says, I love a dry white wine, and this is what I liked before. So now I knew where she was coming from. I knew what her relative dryness was, and then I could guide her through to some other ideas. But had I just gone on what my perception of what dry was, I would have given her something that she would have hated. And it would have been just terrible and puckering for her.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you talked a little bit about the tasting room and that opportunity of talking to consumers directly, and that consumers love to hear from you. What are some of the ways in which you do that? How do you stay in touch with your guests, your members?
Right. So kind of the foundation of that is and this is going to sound like a terrible word, but it's a database. It's actually getting the information about the people so that we can stay in touch with them, and then do it in a relative way. What are their interests? What do they play sports? Do they vacation in certain areas? What kind of foods do they eat? What kind of so it's really getting a lot more information through the conversation about that consumer, so that we can then help them with maybe future decisions, or even just other ideas, other places to go, things like that. So the primary, mechanism, of course, is the tasting room itself, but what do you do before and after? And social media is a huge part of that, without a doubt. Everybody's on Facebook clearly everybody's on Facebook, but Instagram and Twitter, these are all vehicles that we use to continually be in communication with these friends of ours, these guests. And then certainly email, hard mail, and phone calls. You would be surprised at how many wineries don't want to call their customers because they feel like it's an imposition. What I've learned over the years is it's almost exactly the opposite, that the consumer loves to hear from their winery. Now, they don't like to be cold called by some stranger, but they've already come in, visited us, and they love us. They actually want to hear what's new. So everybody takes in communications in different ways. Some are written, some are verbal, some are visual just through pictures. And so what we try to do is we try and communicate everything that we are kind of through those vehicles, visual, verbal, and written.
So social media sort of helps you with the relationship, and yet our world is becoming so much more, e-commerce and people buying online. How is e-commerce for you particularly, and wine industry in general? Do you see that as an area that's going to continue to grow, and does that make sense, or do you lose something in that translation?
You know what? I'll tell you what. It's the truth is that most people they're probably not going to just come to our website and buy wine randomly. That's very rare that actually happens. Most of the time when people come to the website, it's because they've already had an experience with Charles Krug in some way, shape, or form, either at the winery or at a restaurant or at an event, something like that. So I think maybe it's not necessarily. I think when people think of e-commerce, they think, oh, they're just going to go to the website and buy wine. But there's some primary communication that happened before that. Some kind of experiential thing that drove them to the website. So it's sort of the secondary approach to the purchase. But the reality is it's here. I mean, what don't we buy on the internet now? And one of the things I love about it is that it seems to be a great vehicle for people to buy our wines and experience certain things on a more personal touch, but it stimulates them to go out and buy in their local markets too. So they're going out to the restaurants because they have that experience with Charles Krug on social media or email or whatever it happens to be. Then they're going out to the local restaurants and to the local retailers and buying the wine there. So it actually stimulates sort of that three-tier system as well. It's a great symbiotic relationship.
Do you see, I have no idea on this, so this is a question totally out of the blue for me. Do you see more consumers having personal wine cellars or, stocking wine?
That is a darn good question. And if you know who they are, let me know who they are. I'd like.
No, I'm wondering, order by the case. I'm thinking that people have to be able to store it somewhere,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, the good news is that the consumption of wine is up, so people are drinking it faster, which is a good thing. I do see people having wine cellars, but it's not. Let's face it, a wine cellar is real estate, and real estate is expensive in America now. So is that the best use of what they're going to be doing? It does seem like, I've read studies, I just don't know which ones are accurate or not. I mean, but the reality is that most wine is consumed within 48 hours of purchase. So it's, are people cellaring? I don't know. There's always going to be that tier of people that are going to cellar. And then there's going to be people that are like, no, this is for immediate consumption, and let's rock and roll. But I don't. That's a great question. Now you've got me. I'm gonna study that. I'm gonna find out. Is there an increase in the production of wine cellars?
Yeah. Well, good. So what challenges exist not only for Mondavie but for other family-owned wineries? There's certainly lots of them, in Europe, you're one of the few in the U.S. What's the key challenges you see that going forward, especially family-owned wineries?
Right. Yeah. I'm just going to, the truth is that any winery is going through this, whether they're corporately owned or family-owned, and that is, and like any business, and not to be blunt, but it's cash flow. It's the most important thing you can have for any kind of a business is a positive cash flow, and that's very hard to do when you've got an agricultural product where the land itself costs hundreds of thousands of dollars just to purchase and then to farm it, and then to wait for so long. This is a process. If I'm growing Cabernet, for instance, I'm gonna have that in a barrel for 2 years, and then I'm going to have it in a bottle for another year. So I'm, for 3 years from the time I pick those grapes is when I start selling that wine. Well, that's a lot of cash being tied up for a long period of time, and so I think probably everybody in the wine industry would agree that cash is that use of money, time is so valuable. And that's the hardest thing for it. But other than that, I would say that the biggest challenges, of course, are that it's the pie of wineries is expanding. So there's more and more and more wineries. So there's more and more competition, and breaking through and making yourself compelling to these people is harder and harder to do. So just the sheer volume of choices is a huge challenge.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you've seen such a flurry of craft breweries, but wine is such a different
right.
Because it requires the land, it's agricultural, and help you if goodness sakes, Mother Nature decides to make a mess with your crop. So
right.
I can just imagine that's quite the challenge. I probably have time for one more question because I suspect Don's going to jump in now. How do you see the future for the wine industry, and what are you trying to accomplish for Mondavie?
Yeah, I think the future of the wine industry is to continue this march towards it being a cultural part of our society. We're still only at about 3 gallons per capita, and if you look at Europe and various other winemaking areas in France and Italy and Spain and Germany, they're up in the high teens or the mid-teens of consumption. So we just scratched the surface. We happen to be a very large and a very wealthy nation, so our consumption in total is very, very high, but our per capita consumption is low. So I think that challenge to make it more and more culturally okay to drink wine is an ongoing thing. It's just sort of the reality of it. And I think from the C. Mondavie Family and the Charles Krug side of it, the biggest challenge and what I really think that my job to do is to foster this cultural movement to be a great estate and to provide this service and product to these consumers that makes them totally raving fans about us. And all I can do is continue to hopefully set the bar for the rest of the industry for that level of consumer interaction and satisfaction.
Well, Judd, I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. I think I could speak another half an hour with you because there's so much to talk about in terms of the business. And it's clear from your comments that you're so passionate about this industry that you've been a part of for 40 years or so. But I'm going to turn it back to Don because I'm sure he wants to be sure that you get your website in front of folks. And again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Next time, let's do it over a bottle of wine.
Oh, sounds good to me.
Judd, your website that you'd like our people, listeners, to go to?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Go to charleskrug.com. It's a great website. It's incredibly informative and lots of good information. There's so much history. This is the oldest winery in Napa Valley. This is the winery that started all of Napa Valley, and I'm really proud of that. And this website actually, I think, does a great job of walking you through not only the past of Charles Krug and then the Mondavie family, but also kind of talks about, and here's the next generation. Here's where we're going in the future. So it's a beautiful website.
Well, as an old boss used to say, I'll drink to that. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Thank you, Judd.
Thank you very much, and pleasure being on the show.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
And our next guest is Andrea Spirov. She is founder and CEO of B.O.S.S, B.O.S.S, Foods of Houston. She has a line of what her company says are superfood snacks. Andrea, welcome to the program, and I turn it right over to you.
Thanks, Don. Andrea, welcome to Food and Wine Insider. I read a lot about your background, which is really fascinating. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your early career before you created B.O.S.S Raw Superfood Bars. You were an administrative director for a company in Norway. You've also created your own travel website. Talk a little bit about those experiences.
Good morning, Ann and Don. Thanks for having me. Yes, I started my career in marketing. My first career move was as an art director in the advertising industry. So I studied at Miami Ad School and then worked on a number of accounts in New York and in Australia. So I married an Australian. I moved over there about in 2005. And then I was transitioning my career a little bit into the online space, doing a master's in marketing and online media. And so the websites, that was the Norway experience, and then also the travel website sort of came about as we were traveling. We're expats for many years, as my husband is in the oil and gas industry. And so I had a lot of opportunities to travel and get freelance work and sort of just tell the story about our experiences. We really enjoy travel and food as well. So there were a lot of opportunities to take pictures and write about those travels.
Fantastic. You then, I don't know, maybe I'll call it an epiphany, in 2013 to change your health, you changed your diet, your lifestyle, even your circumstances. Talk a little bit about that journey.
Yes, so early 30s, I started to be really tired. I was having a hard time. We were trying to have a baby. I was having a really hard time with that. And at the time, we had moved back to the United States, so I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of doctors. And I had some of the reproductive endocrinologists. One was saying, oh, you're going to need donor eggs. And I thought, this cannot be right. I'm pretty healthy. I haven't had any issues before this that were serious, aside from just congenital thyroid problems that I was born with. So I really started digging into my lifestyle and what I was eating, and had some tests run, and a lot of it came up as just nutritional deficiencies. And also I have this MTHFR gene mutation that some people are starting to become aware of, so you can't process synthetic folic acid properly. And just in switching the type of vitamins I was taking and eating cleaner food and really switching away from a lot of harsh chemicals in my environment, in less than 18 months, I did a complete 180 and got pregnant and started feeling great. I never had any issues with being tired anymore. So I really made this huge shift in my diet and lifestyle and have kept it going. And I feel great now. So I really started to believe that a lot of the issues, the health issues that we have, I mean, certainly not everything, but a lot of changes can be easily made just by changing your diet.
It seems that there's such a great focus now on that. A lot of products and people talking about a lot of it. You are what you eat, and that seems to be coming to fruition. I think it was 2015 in Houston, you created B.O.S.S, B-O.S.S. Tell us a bit about that name and how you got started making these bars.
So B.O.S.S is Blended Original Superfood Snacks. It's an acronym. I actually came up with the B.O.S.S first. I like alliteration, so I wanted to have the some kind of bars and the B name. I had been playing around with superfoods and reading a lot about these foods that are really nutritionally dense. So you're getting all kinds of vitamins and minerals just from a small serving of something. Like in our case, it's bars, so they're just a soft, chewy bar. And so I just started playing around in the kitchen. I took them to the farmer's market. I started with one farmer's market. People seemed to like them. So I went to other farmer's markets, and people still liked them. So I just kept making them and kept going. And here we are. I kind of didn't know what I was getting into in terms of making a packaged good that was going to sell and distribute more widely when I started. It certainly wasn't my intent to make it big. It just kind of evolved.
I really appreciate that, because so many, specialty companies essentially start in those farmers markets. It's almost a great way to do a lot of market research. You're really directly in front of the consumer and getting a real sense of how they feel about the product, and it can even help with the marketing. You have some pretty impressive core values and what the consumers should expect from your bars. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about those.
Yes, I mean, I think you're coming from our website. The clean label is our big thing. So we use only 8 ingredients per bar. Every ingredient is a superfood. So we are certified paleo and certified gluten-free. It was really important to me that we didn't use any sort of synthetic vitamin powders or mixes in our bars, that everything just came just from the whole foods. So all the fruit I buy is no sugar added. So we have unsweetened blueberries, unsweetened tart cherries. It costs more, so our bars are a little bit higher on the price range. But for me, just that clean, most people say when they eat our bars, they can taste every flavor in the bar. And then also bringing really unusual superfoods to the bars is also important to me, because I think there are tons of superfood bars out there, and everyone's exploring different ingredients right now. So you have bars with chia, you have people are using a lot of mushroom powders now and things in bars. The ones that we use that are special are like the maqui berries, which is a Patagonian berry from Chile, aronia berries, which actually have a North American origin, and but they also grow in Europe. And we use the raw cacao powder from South America, and nani fruit is a really unusual one that we use in one of our bars, which is a Polynesian healing plant. So really a focus on bringing these ingredients that are really, really nutrient dense to our food.
You know, I think you bring a really good point, because it is a very crowded category, you know, the bars. And yet, as you're talking, this is what really makes you unique and desirable. You've also positioned your bars for different times of the day. Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of either mood or you know, times of the day when maybe you need to get a little bit more energy and that sort of thing? Because I think it's a really fascinating way to have positioned each of your individual products.
Yes, as I was researching the superfoods, I started looking at what each one does. So, you know, our Think Bar has all the traditional brain-boosting superfoods. It really just came out of a lot of research. I'm kind of a data hound, and I was compiling all the information on them, and I thought, well, that would be cool if the recipes actually tasted good based on what goes together from nature in terms of their benefits. So I started playing with that, and actually they came together pretty easily. Things that do good things for you in the same way. They seem to taste good together as well. So we have the Move Bar, which has a lot of sort of anti-inflammatory ingredients. The aronia berries have the highest antioxidants of any berry out there. They've been studied for post-workout inflammation. You have the Smile Bar, has all those tryptophan-containing ingredients. So that's makes serotonin in your body. The raw cacao powder, so that's the unadulterated, healthy part of the chocolate that before they cook all the nutrients out of it when they process it with heat. So that went into the Smile Bar. And it's just clever. I mean, like I said, I have a marketing background, so I like to try and do clever things, but also they do have research behind them.
When you say raw food, because I think consumers hearing a lot raw food and what that, I imagine it conjures up a lot of images for the consumer. What does it really mean?
For us, it means, and there's no legal definition of raw. For us, it means that the process does not go above 115 degrees. Raw is getting a little bit more difficult in this country because with FSMA, everything is, a lot of our suppliers no longer make the raw nuts, and it's getting more difficult to import the truly raw nuts. But in terms of, in our process, it's a cold pressed bar. We don't heat anything except to boil the tea for the tea syrup that we make with the rooibos tea. But that is strictly to actually get the nutrients out of the tea. And just also very clean and pure. We use, if it's a dirty dozen ingredient, we use a certified organic ingredients. Our product is not all organic. We started that way. We started to be organic, but customers didn't want to pay the cost of having every ingredient organic. It was just made it very expensive. But all the superfood powders and all are all organic.
Right. No, I think that's really helpful because, as you say, there's no definition, and FSMA, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act, has a lot of requirements in terms of, your source of supply and ensuring, where you're getting your product from and the quality of those ingredients. So it sounds like you've done a really great job from a traceability standpoint. Your products are also safe for those with celiac disease or other gluten sensitivities. Could you talk a little bit about that? And I didn't know this. There's a Celiac Support Association Recognition Seal Program. Can you talk a little bit about both the product safety piece and the recognition seal? Yes. So when I started looking at certifications for our product, I noticed there were mainly 2 or 3 different gluten-free certifications at the Celiac Support Association, and I believe now they've
merged with the National Celiac Association or something like that. So that name might change. But that certification has the strictest standard. It's less than 5 parts per million of gluten. And so we have to actually lab test anytime we bring in a new ingredient. That's part of our supplier approval process, is to go and have a lab test to make sure that, there really is that threshold of there's no gluten in it of less than 5 parts per million. I think some of the other certifications are less than 10 parts per million. And the strictness came also out of the farmer's market. I would meet a lot of people who had celiac disease or Crohn's disease or, some of these other digestive problems that they were really, really sensitive to gluten. So it's important for us. And especially we started in a shared kitchen. Right now we have our own facility, but just making sure that when we were making things in that shared facility that it actually didn't have any cross-contamination of gluten there.
You also have paleo certification. What are the requirements for to be certified as paleo?
So paleo, you can't have any grains or anything that, paleo is all about how your ancestors ate, so there's a long list of things that it can't have. The grains is a big one. The Paleo Foundation, they do a great job of checking out all your ingredient suppliers, so you actually go and submit your ingredient profiles from the supplier, and then they actually contact the supplier also to make sure there are no additives. So for example, if I was bringing in, cherries and they had some kind of a refined sugar component, that wouldn't be allowed. So each of our ingredients have been checked by them to make sure that they really are clean and pure. And we only use 2 paleo-approved sweeteners as well. So we have our coconut nectar, which is a low glycemic sweetener with a lot of nutritional benefits to it. And we also use raw honey, and those are both paleo-approved sweeteners, but very, very few sweeteners are paleo approved.
And there's so much about health with your product, but your packaging is also sustainable. So you've paid so much attention to all aspects of your product. Can you tell us about your packaging as well?
Well, the packaging, I tried to get an email to you about that. We had changed away from the compostable packaging. We're having some issues with cost and sort of what we were able to do. The compostable packaging just has very limited suppliers, and for us, not being in flow wrapper yet, we're still sort of hand making everything and hand filling them. So we couldn't make that work with we have a new line of packaging coming out next Friday, so we're launching a new version. But I am interested in that sustainable, and I'm hoping that we will be able to get back to it.
It's interesting because there have been other companies that I've interviewed, and even recycling bottles is a real challenge. So I really applaud you for trying to find ways to be sustainable. And I'm sure for you, I'd love to hear about some of the core challenges. You have some pretty unique ingredients. You have a very unique positioning. What have been some of the challenges, even from a manufacturing standpoint? As you said, you were in a shared kitchen. I think you said you're now self-manufacturing. Can you talk a little bit about those challenges?
I think just any time you're setting up doing manufacturing and you've never done it before is going to be challenging when you're doing it yourself. And we don't have the volumes right now to go to a co-packer. We're working towards that, and we're speaking to co-manufacturers about and the next step would be to go to a co-packer to take on some larger accounts if we could get those equipment. So it's kind of become a little bit of a family business. My father is a retired structural engineer, and he's managed billion-dollar projects all over the world. So he helped me figure out a lot of things with equipment and actually making this work. When I started, I remember he came into the kitchen one time and he's kind of laughing at me because I'm kind of rolling things out and doing it very slow in terms of making the bars. So we actually got together and he's helped me a lot. So thanks, Dad, in terms of figuring out how to make them. But there are always challenges in terms of budget. So we're self-funded right now from revenue and my own funds. So we don't have big venture capital behind us and a lot of money for things. For me, we've spent a lot of money on, when we moved into our own facility, which is small, just 1,000 square feet. I stopped sales for a few months last year just to get everything up to standard in terms of food safety. That's something that's really important to us, obviously. And with FSMA, there are all kinds of new requirements. So all of those things, though, they cost money, they cost time, but they're important. You have to do them. So, and the ingredients, yes, that is a piece for us that is difficult because we're not buying in huge quantities, and it's difficult to get good prices. I feel like the ingredients prices are fluctuating all the time. They're going up. Brazil nuts, there was a huge, I can't remember if it was drought or excessive rain, but the Brazil nuts, the price nearly doubled on Brazil nuts, and 2 of our products have Brazil nuts in them, and we didn't want to raise prices, so just kind of took a hit there. But it is constantly a challenge to find ingredients that come from a good supplier and that are affordable. So that is, we have 23 ingredients that we use, so it's a lot to manage. We're always looking at ways to reduce costs and make things more efficient.
Yeah, and I applaud you for certainly self-funding where you have gotten to date, and it's always a challenge for the entrepreneur to continue to do that. At some point, when you want to go big, it also means there's money. There's a lot of money involved, and I think I just read that you're taking your brand national at the Natural Products Expo West, which is coming up this month. Talk about that. That's a huge step. And what are you bringing to the show?
So right now we sell in about 10 states, but they're all sort of small accounts. Kroger is my biggest customer here in Houston, so we sell in local Kroger stores here. As far as the national piece, Houston really is a big city. It's not always known as the most health-conscious city, so I felt like we really needed to grow outside of Houston. We started to get interest, especially online, and we sell on Amazon from people all over the country, so it just seems like a natural step to open our company up and say, hey, if you would like to carry our products, we can service you in terms of wholesale or distributor as well. So we are part of the UNFI Next program. So we have one DC open in the Pacific Northwest. So we're also looking to grow that way. So yes, it is a big step, but there are always things to manage, and we're very much an emerging brand. We look to spend a lot of money on in-store promotions and things like that, less so on sort of advertising agencies or anything like that. So we're at a place where we can support that kind of growth, and then we're always looking at the next step. So like I mentioned, co-manufacturers, if we did get a partner that, had a lot of demand for our products, we would obviously be moving to co-manufacturing. And I think there's about a six to 8 month lead time on something like that. But that's always a big challenge, because by the same token, you're providing your recipes, and sometimes you have to, not so much from the ingredient standpoint, but from the packaging standpoint, depends on what the co-packer actually has, and versus do they do something sort of very different and special to you because you have maybe a unique package size or whatever. And I think that's always a challenge, but it's a smart thing to do, because you really want to focus on being able to market your brand and get attention to your brand. And when you're worrying every day about making it, it sort of pushes your attention away from actually marketing and distributing and getting it in front of the consumer. But it sounds like you've done some really terrific things to move the brand forward and move the product forward. You were talking about distribution, you're talking about UNFI. You're in Pacific Northwest, and is your plan to be national very quickly with them, or how are you seeing the rollout? It's difficult to know who's interested. So, each time you want to open a DC, you need to have a certain, distribution center. You need to have a certain number of customers. So, I really don't know. It really just depends on where the interest is for our brand. The thing is, as you mentioned, it's also a volume game. I mean, in terms of making profit, and we're not yet a profitable company. And you need to be in a lot of places, I feel. I mean, bars, they churn pretty quickly. Some of the, when we're in a hotel and they're selling them in a hotel gift shop or something, they're turning very quickly. But, the smaller health food stores that don't get as much traffic, or the traffic comes in and it's not necessarily looking for food, they don't turn as fast. So, you do need to be in a lot of stores to really start to be able to, to grow and spend more money on marketing and things like that. But it's hard to know who's going to want your product. I mean, we have a lot of interest, from California. Obviously, people there are very health-minded, but you just don't know. You don't know who's going to be interested in taking you on. So I guess that's part of Natural Products Expo, is sort of getting out there and meeting people and telling our story and seeing who's interested in working with us.
And how many products do you have in the line right now?
We have five bars.
That's a good number. It's just to make sure they all sort of get the turn, so that the retailers certainly stay interested. Can you tell us a little bit about the causes you support that are consistent with that philosophy that you have?
So I'm really interested in anything that gets harmful substances out of our environment. So a huge pain point for me, we have a pledge to donate 1% of profits to that kind of charitable work. We're a bit small right now, so we're not able to do very much in that area. But as it grows, for example, I have a 3-year-old, and just the amount of marketing that's directed towards children and really sugary foods is a real pain point for me. Just constantly in the store, and you're bombarded by things that are marketed towards kids, and you look at the sugar content, and it's really a problem. I think children are eating 50 pounds of sugar a year. So that's something I'm really interested in working on in some capacity in the future.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago the thing to avoid most in terms of introducing children to is sugar and salt. And if you can do that and get them eating healthy from the beginning, they'll probably be healthy eaters going forward. So I think that's terrific, and I think that really is important, because there's clearly, we have obesity issues and diabetic issues, and those all just creep up over time, a lot of which is a function of diet. But I really appreciate what you've shared about your product, and I'm just curious, what's next for you?
Well, I hope to just keep growing this business. I have a whole pipeline of products I'd love to launch, but obviously it's a function of financials. We're trying to build a sustainable business, and so right now, anytime anyone says, "Oh, well, you should do this kind of bar," I'm like, I'd love to, but it gets very expensive. Each one is different packaging and different research and our certifications and things like that. So right now we're just very focused on our 5 bars and getting them out there and growing the line, and obviously getting to a point where we can move to co-manufacturing and just keep going.
And so people can find your product today online as well as in Kroger?
Yes, online on Amazon. We're in Kroger in Houston, and then we sell in about 30 retail locations across the country, but very small accounts. So you'll find us in a local health food store or a juice bar or a coffee shop. So we're not with any other national big chains right now. Kroger's doing a lot with their local program, so that's how we got in with them over here in Houston. So there could be more Texas expansion there. But right now, Amazon and our website.
I would think stores like Central Market would love to have a product like yours, because you have a great story and a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. Central Market. I think we've reached out to them, and maybe we will see them at the show. I don't know.
Awesome. Dawn, I think, Andrea, first off, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed speaking with you and hearing about your journey and the challenges you face. You're clearly a very positive person, and all the things that are making your product successful. I love the names of the individual items. You've got Move and Think and Smile and Restore and Dazzle. I think it makes your bars feel like an experience and sort of feeling good, which is kind of important to a healthy lifestyle.
Andrea, What is your website?
It's bossfoodco.com. So B as in boy, O, S as in Sam, S as in Sam, foodco.com.
And if the people want to talk to you directly, how can they do it?
They can email me at Andrea, Andrea, at bossfoodco.com. We always love to hear from anybody, just anyone who has thoughts on the product or interested in working with us. I appreciate very much your having me on the show. It's really exciting. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Food and Wine Insider with Ann Daw and Don Mazzella. foodandwineinsider.com. Food and Wine Insider.